Welcome to the first official episode of the Ignite Your Life show, right?
That's right.
What's our topic for today, Guillermo?
Our topic today, I think, is a good one in that everybody's always struggling to be what everybody wants us to be. And then one day we discover that we're unhappy. So the topic today is you don't need anyone's permission to be who you want to be.
But that in itself, if you could let that just sink down, then it could be an epic thing, an epic aha moment just to say that. My goodness, I know that. I've done it so long, for so long.
I know. I have too. That's why I know this lesson well because I lived the other side of it, to wake up now and again just feeling miserably unhappy and unfulfilled.
Right.
And, it has so much to do with the way we were brought up.
When you were feeling that way, was in that moment, was it apparent to you that that was what the problem was?
No, no, that was never apparent. I think that I was always so busy chasing after that golden ring that I thought everybody, I was supposed to get, that I didn't find out that I wasn't happy about it until I actually achieved it, until I reached that golden ring. And then within days, this darkness would come over my soul and I couldn't figure out what it was. So it's taken me a while to figure out that I was just out of alignment with myself.
Interesting. It's interesting that it means sometimes being in alignment with someone else's desires, that could mean being out of alignment with yourself.
Yeah. In fact, I would bet money that when you're following what everybody else is telling you to do,
Mm.
things like, like we grow up with, like you need to be sensible, you need to make the practical solution, that
Yeah,
those things that we just think it's a natural that we say, oh yeah, that's just common sense. That even those things are packed with someone else's projection of what they want that they're actually putting on you.
yeah. But that's a whole nother level because I know there's those people, you can have people in your life that they are the ones trying to tell you what you should do with your life or trying to push their desires on you. But to think that on having it on a societal level, that's a whole different thing.
Yeah. Oh, well, you know what though, that you bring up a good point in that I think happens is they think they're doing you good by projecting on you what they learn about society and how they survive. Like maybe for example, they grew up really poor, and
Right.
so they really hoard money, because they're afraid to lose it. So then when you ask them for financial advice, they keep telling you, oh, you can't take risks. You got to put your money in the bank or, stuff it in a mattress or whatever. And what they're doing is that they're giving you advice to help you, but it's really based on their experiences. Or, or it could be something like, they came from very strict family and they see that you let your kids run around loose in the grocery store or whatever, and they
Oh,
tell
that's so good.
yeah, and they tell you, you know what, your kids are wild, you need to get control of it, and things like that. And what they're really projecting is their own beliefs and their own background.
Oh
And
my goodness.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
We tell it like it is. It sounds like fear to me. It sounds like they're pushing their fear out on everyone else. You know?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, is that they project their fear on you because they must be afraid of being seen as bad parents, for example, if there's kids run around. So they're really strict with their kids or whatever. And so, but what happens to us, I think, to all of us as people, is we're surrounded by people like this, co-workers, their parents, their, aunts and uncles, or your priest. We're, so we're surrounded by that. So we're always getting this input from people telling us what we should do. And a lot of times you end up ignoring what it truly is you want to do. And,
Right.
and then years go by and you're living this life that other people want you to live, and you're miserable. And
because it's not yet.
you wake up one day and you're like, who am I? And what am I doing here?
Right. Right. I think there's so many layers to that because on one side you could feel like, let's see, well, on one side of it is like when you have that relationship with a person that you don't want to disappoint. And on the other side, it's like when you feel like, well, I need to do what's right. That's generally what's right in life, and then there is the fear aspect. And so between all that, I can imagine, I know that I've struggled with it too. It can be hard to know what your desire is. I guess you have to get down to who you are.
Yeah. And but when you spend a lifetime, I mean, I'm 69 years old. Yeah, I mean, I think till I spent till my 60s, till my early 60s, living that life, and then you lose sight of who the hell you are when you all of a sudden you realize that everything you do, even the way you dress, is,
Yeah.
is you're wanting you're like seeking people approval. Does this look okay? Does that look okay? Or
Yeah.
I talk about, um, I always wanted to buy a two-seater convertible my whole life, but I'd always talk myself out of it because the practical thing is, well, you better get a car that you can haul people around in, or haul equipment, or gardening stuff and whatever, and then you end up denying yourself your true desire, in my case, which was to have a little two-seater convertible. Who could I possibly have harmed? Have
Right.
convertible, but I would have pleased myself. But those are that's a disconnect that I always had, is that you then do the practical thing that everybody tells you to do.
Right. Because sometimes just because it's popular.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I don't think there's been much of a priority. I mean, in society, lately especially, there's a lot about self-expression. You know, be yourself, and you should be accepted and all this. But I don't know that there's a lot about really discovering who you are as your identity. So you're expressing something, and then often you're trying to express something different because it's supposed to be about self-expression. But I don't think if you don't really get to a point of knowing yourself, that expression, even that is even has any meaning, holds any meaning.
I agree, because most of us don't even know that what our self-expression is. Most of us are expressing what we've been taught or what we've been trained to do. And how do you discover then who you are, so then the expression that you give really truly is an expression of yourself?
I can imagine, and I have felt it too, that when you do get the boldness to take that step, that springboard of guilt, that barrier of guilt is still there. And sometimes I think that it's like if you take the step and you say, well, I'm not going to care. I know this is right for me. Even later, you could still have that guilt keep bouncing back on you to, I guess, push you back into conformity. And it's like, well, how do you get past that? How do you get past that buffer?
Uh, and that is the crux of the challenge, isn't it? Because even if you think you want to do something, what guilt to me represents, and you said it earlier, fear. What
Yeah.
guilt to me represents is I'm afraid of disappointing somebody. I'm afraid they won't like me, or I'm afraid that God won't like me. Whatever your guilt is based on.
Yeah.
And so what I've learned to discovered is that that guilt was that fear that was hammered into me about, you need to be a good boy because you don't want to because otherwise Santa isn't going to bring you presents.
Right.
So you have all those messages in you, and they become unconscious. So what I do anymore is that whenever I feel fear about something, I sit with it, and when I realize that the fear is really based on pleasing and disappointing other people, then I walk through it. Then I say, okay, I'm on the right path. This is this barrier now is no longer a barrier. It's become my sign that that's what I need to do. So now that doesn't mean take a risk and take a jump out of an airplane with a parachute on. I mean, I still think that jumping out of a perfectly good airplane makes no sense.
Perfect.
You know, so I mean, but for you, it might. For someone else, it may mean, I need to do something bold in my life that reminds me that I can do whatever I want. And so maybe you want to do that. But I don't think that self expression means you risk your life. It just simply means you begin to risk disappointing other people because that is what's controlling you.
Yeah, yeah, because even that, a skydiving could be done out of peer pressure, couldn't it? It could be someone else like, come on, let's go, this will be fun.
Yeah, yeah, you could be doing it because you're afraid of disappointing somebody. You know what? You're right. That exists too. But imagine, like I don't know, what does your guilt feel like? Is it disappointing other people, or is it a religious guilt? What does your guilt feel like?
It's just anxiety and it's general. So sometimes it's hard for me to identify. Well, it's gotten better as I've become more aware, you know what I mean, of some of the things that life lessons that I've learned. But for me, everything, whether it's whatever it is, it always comes in this form of like nervous tension. It always does. And it's never specific. It never is. And so it always takes me, for me, it takes a lot of work for me to really focus and dig in to either relieve it or understand it, you know.
Do you try to do it anyway, even though you're feeling the nervous tension? Whatever
Yes.
it is, you do it, and then do you feel like that it breaks down that nervous tension?
It's almost like blowing it out. Sometimes it is, you know. Sometimes it still haunts me for a minute, you know what I mean? And it's not always about things that someone would say, or that in general society or anyone that I know would say are unacceptable. For me, the worst moments are really self-consciousness, you know? It's like it's really me, I guess, judging me, you know what I mean? Keep
Yeah,
thinking about, oh, you, how you must have looked or something like that, you know what I mean?
yeah.
And yeah,
Well,
it's it's
is that I have a little bit of that too, in that you, for whatever reason, and being a people pleaser, I also felt I needed to be perfect for everyone. That you don't please people when you fail. So, or when you don't.
some people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You might please some people actually, but you're right. But I mean, it's that. But to me, what you were describing sounded like you expect so much of yourself that you expect to be perfect. And if you view yourself as less than perfect, no matter what you accomplish, it never feels very good because you're less than perfect in your eyes. Is that familiar to you?
It is. You know, I think that some of the most major times for me is me speaking out either what I wanted, you know, or asserting myself brings the most of that. You know, there are times maybe if it's someone that they seem like I don't know they consider on a higher level than I am, or anything like that, and me having to say whatever it is that just uh, represents, on my behalf, then it becomes this thing for me. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the I was going with
No,
it.
you know what? That sounds so familiar. That you're like, yeah, I don't know if I have the experience to speak on that or whatever, or he has more, she has more experience than I do. I think that I suffer through that, and it's a self-worth issue. That I have to start accepting. You know what? I was created a special individual and placed on this earth, and so I have something to say that's specifically my voice.
Right.
And so it's not me against someone else. It's specifically, I'm supposed to say it because people need to hear it. And I don't know that I'm doing great with that, but certainly was a discovery that I made, that believing that my voice was important. And this goes back to our topic about you don't need anybody's permission to express your opinion or your desire you know, that's your right. That's you. That's what's coming from within. That's your method of self-expression. But it feels to me, or when I view what's happening in the world around me, it seems like society and our parents and everybody is constantly trying to shape us to conform to these rules and regulations of society. You know, and, and it's like a full-time job for them. And I've raised kids, and I think I did the same thing.
it gets more difficult. As you grow, there's different levels of that of what someone says the rules you should follow are. So
Right.
sometimes even that conflict puts you in a place where you kind of further box in because your parents can have one set of rules that's right, and then you get out in the world, and then maybe it's the teacher or the employer or whoever it is that you feel that whose lead you should follow, and there's some conflict in that. It's not even necessarily on a level of saying like morality or religious rules, or just a way of doing things. You can feel very, very boxed in.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I you can it could be the words of a song that you listen to, or a famous athlete that you admire, and this is what they say they should do, or this is what they do, and you want to be like them, so then you start doing it too, and you think that if you do it different, that you can't be like them or whatever. But yeah, you're right. It's
And
all around us.
I think the major problem with that is the issue of creativity. And when we really, if you really take a view and you take a look around the world, you see all the inventions of things. You have to know that these things came from a place of creativity. They came from someone doing something different than the norm, or believing in something that most people didn't believe in. And they came into an invention that how many we have around today. And I think that we would have more if more people weren't feeling boxed in that way.
I think so, and I think that's why it's important to talk about this, is that it's good for us to have rules in society for us to get along, but it should not become a process of making us all the same. Because what you say is true. Each individual has kind of its own creative force. Imagine when Galileo started talking about the earth going around the sun and stuff like that, or talking about the earth being round or whatever, and the religious leaders
Oh,
at that time felt that he was blasphemous, you know?
do you know that is still an argument today?
Oh, I know.
The flat Earth, they're
Yeah.
still arguing that.
Yeah.
I
Oh, yeah.
uh,
Well, we could get into all of those conspiracy theories and all that stuff. Those are pretty creative, you got to admit.
yeah.
The latest one is the reptile aliens that are controlling government officials. But
Oh my goodness.
but I think though you really hit on a key point about that. Maybe that's the way to say it. When we give our power to other people for them to tell us how to be, then we grow out of touch with our own connection to the creative source, higher consciousness that's a part of all of us, but it's speaking personally through us. And I think it's through our creative thoughts.
I think that is the true source of self-expression.
I
You
agree.
know,
I
creativity, and when you're getting creative in the way you dress or whatever you do, that's when you've got your true self-expression. See, I don't think there's really a way to have creativity in one aspect of your life and be boxed in and have that creativity flow. Especially me, like in my work, marketing and designing and doing the things that I do. I Like the creativity, the freedom to feel that self-expression. The better I feel that, the better I'm able to do even my job.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times, because you were talking about fear, a lot of times I feel afraid of something, and then I go ahead and decide to do it or take a step to do it, and I'm overcome with the sense of joy and excitement that I'm doing this. Like all of
Yeah.
a sudden, once I cross that path, uh, it's like I got immediate uh, um, an immediate sign that it's the right path for me, because all of a sudden I'm filled with energy and passion and excitement about doing it. And but it took me to get past that little fear, that little barrier in, at the beginning. And then what you find is that fear feels like you're being asked to jump off this really high cliff, and you're going to die. And then when you finally decide to jump off the cliff, it turns out it's only that high.
Yeah, yeah.
But you don't know that until you actually jump it, you know. So, but it's that affirmation. That's the word I was looking for. That when you take those steps, you're affirmed that that's what you're supposed to do. And that's why when you say like it affects your work, don't you feel more creative and like all of a sudden you're just bombarded with great ideas and things to follow and what have you?
And it's well, yeah, well, it's interesting to me when you mentioned the your feeling of joy. It's like getting into that flow. People worry about their productivity, and that joy, okay, that fear feels like a weight. And when that weight is lifted, then that when that joy comes, that's actually the feeling of flow and productivity. You can't really get there when you're weighted down. And sometimes it's through fear, and sometimes it comes from all of the things that we've been talking about here.
Yeah. I like that metaphor that it feels like a weight. And then, and it's true. Fear like weighs you down. It takes your energy away. You're like, ugh, you got to push through it kind of thing.
Well, you're trying to limit yourself, right? I mean, you're trying to not step over those barriers. So in a way, it is that block. It's that weight. It's that blocking
Yeah.
that resistance, not letting it in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
I just feel it. It sits right here on my
you feel like you have the little good angel and the little bad angel talking to both sides of your ear.
You just kind of got one that's got you by the neck.
Yeah, I like that's good. That's good. But you know what? I mean, at the end of the day, is I think that we wanted to talk about this topic because it affects everyone. We all feel restricted to be who we want to be. Now that doesn't mean go across the street and kick the crap out of your neighbor because you've
I
always
felt like it.
yeah, yeah, but I think I would add to it is that everything that comes from you, from your true inner source, from your true higher self, is as Abraham Lincoln would say, the better angels of your nature. Their love and courage and kindness and creativity. It's
Yeah.
not hate, violence, revenge. Those are not from your true self. That's your ego wanting to get even, or wanting to feel good about his or herself. So I think it's those, but it's those things that please you. And like I like being kind to people. Like I love going to a restaurant and being really nice to the waiter or the waitress, and really being appreciative of the service that they give me, for example. I mean, I love doing that because I know how I would feel if I was waiting on someone and they really appreciated what I was doing for them. And so to me, that's how identifying those things. But you first really have to start out with, those things you want to do. You wanted to learn to speak Italian and you've never done it, or you wanted to go to Australia, or heck, maybe you just want to go to Kansas City, whatever. And you've held yourself back because of expectations of everyone else. And life is short. And I think what we're saying is don't wait for anybody to give you permission to do those things that you want to do for yourself. It's an important part of your development.
Wait for permission, absolutely. When it comes to, I think, expressing love and expressing kindness and being kind, because some of it has been come, sometimes that comes from a place of that pre-programming we've been talking about. You gotta have to do it because it makes you feel good.
Right.
When it makes you feel good, when you're doing it for the sake of itself, not because of it's the proper thing to do, but because when it's flowing from you because you feel joyful, and then that love just kind of emanates from you. That's when it's great. Yeah,
That's a great point. It's that thing about if you're being kind to another person because you're expecting them to be kind back, that's not the right motivation. Kindness is something you do because you believe it's a good thing to do. And it makes you feel good to be kind to others, whether they pay that kindness back or not.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree with that completely. So
Well, I think that's our time for today, but I think we had a wonderful time. I did.
I did
Did
too.
you?
I think this is fun.
It was fun.
And I think we covered some good points.
We did. That might spurn off a whole nother list of episodes. We watched the playback.
Yeah, yeah. You know that thing about feeling fear, but going ahead and doing things anyway is another good topic
Well,
to talk
here's
about.
proof right here. We're doing-
Yeah, there is. Okay. All
All
right.
right.
Well, good.
Until next time, girl.
Okay. See you, Lisa. Take care.